Greatest of mornings to any and all who are attending on Zoom. We are going to be going live on Facebook within the next 2 minutes. So hopefully any who are planning on attending via that format will be able to have access to the workshop. Looking forward to another fantastic Sunday session with the Education Esquire, and we're going to be commencing very shortly. So thanks so much for tuning in to all whom do, and we are looking forward to getting it going very shortly. Today's workshop is about limited liability companies, how to market your business, how to move the business forward, how to properly organize and incorporate, how to make sure that you're registered with the Illinois Secretary of State in the manner that you're supposed to be, and all of those details in between. So we are going live on Facebook right now. So greatest of mornings to everyone who is joining in on Facebook. Waiting for it to load. Looks like it's coming up right now as we speak. So we are going to be getting started on the Facebook side. So today's workshop, Sunday sessions with the Education Esquire. Workshop discussing LLCs versus corporations and how to market, protect, and grow your business. All right, we are going live. So it should be posting live now on Facebook. It is 8:58 a.m. We will be starting in exactly 2 minutes, getting the party started to discuss all of the details and intricacies of LLCs, how you can protect yourself, the benefits of LLCs, kind of the history of it as well, why LLCs came into existence in the early to mid 90s, and really what the differences are between all of these different terms. You hear about general partnerships, you hear about doing business as DBAs, you hear about having your assumed name. With the clerk of Cook County, there's an assumed name registry. So all of those details are going to be discussed as a part of today's workshop, and we are very excited to cover a lot of things that most people haven't even given much consideration to. So we're going to talk about marketing strategies. We're going to talk about SEO, search engine optimization. We're going to talk about how to make sure that you are tracking your demographics, who your target demographic should be and why they should be that. So we are going to be launching and getting started very shortly here. All are welcome to attend. We are live streaming on Facebook, and then of course, any can join on Zoom. So it's 8:59. We're going to start sharing the screen. I'm going to start with the initial slide. This initial slide is going to be talking about your business options. Here in the state of Illinois, you have several options. You can have a corporation, you can have a general partnership, you can have a sole proprietorship, and an LLC. So it is 9 a.m. exactly. Greatest of mornings to each and every person who is tuning in. My name is Mario A. Reed. I am the Education Esquire, and we are starting today's Sunday session with the Education Esquire, which is going to focus on LLCs, businesses, how to grow your business, how to market your business, and how to move that business forward. So the first slide that we're going to be looking at relates to Illinois business options. You have several options that you can choose to formulate your business. And let's take a step back. Most time people think that only if I have a brick and mortar location should I have a business, but that is the furthest thing from the truth. If you have a side hustle, if you have any hustle that involves you as the owner going out and getting business, that could be that you are doing a multi-level marketing. You could be working for another organization, but as what's called a 1099 contractor. As long as it's you making the decisions on what happens in order for you to get money, then it's more than likely a case where you are a business. And because you are a business, there are benefits that come with being a business. There are also dangers which come with being a business. And that's the number one reason why you want to properly incorporate or you want to properly register your company with the state that you're doing business in. Businesses are registered at the state level. That comes from the police powers of the United States Constitution. which is the 10th Amendment. Those police powers allow for the states to regulate the health, welfare, and well-being of their citizens. So if you are doing business in the state of Illinois, you are impacting the health, welfare, and well-being of residents and citizens of the state of Illinois. This is why you would need to register your business with the Illinois Secretary of State. We're going to talk today about that process. We're going to talk about a lot of the things that most people are unaware of as it relates to that process. Most people think you just go online to the Secretary of State's website, you fill out the information they're looking for, and then you apply for the EIN, Employer Identification Number, to the IRS, and then you're good. It's not as simple as that, and you really put yourself at risk if you think that that's all that's involved with creating your limited liability company or corporation. So the corporation is the primary format that most people are familiar with. If it's McDonald's, if it's Walmart, if it's Target, these are corporations that most of us are aware of. We've heard these names, they're household brand names, and we are familiar with them as corporations. A general partnership is a very different arrangement. That's essentially when you have two businesses who are operating together in a single venture. General partnerships happen a lot when it comes to professionals. If you have two dentists, they'll usually enter into a general partnership. If you have two different attorneys who are essentially independent businesses, but they want to operate under one umbrella because they want to do business together, that's a general partnership. Doctors, CPAs, professionals typically enter into general partnerships because they're saying, we want to kind of be recognized as individual businesses, but we also want to have a joint venture together. So general partnerships work out very well for that purpose. Sole proprietorships, or doing business as, or DBA, or assumed names, all of those are wrapped up together. So you have your sole proprietorship. That's when one person is operating. The example that is always used is the handyman. So most of us know of a handyman in the neighborhood who goes around to people's houses and can fix anything. So you got a leaky toilet, call the handyman. You need to have a desk assembled, call the handyman. The handyman is really basically a sole proprietor. He is the only person involved with his business or her business, and that individual is all to it. They don't have employees, they don't have a accounting department. They're pretty much a one-person show. That's when a sole proprietorship comes in. Sole proprietorships are very dangerous when it comes to liability because you're putting yourself out to the world, telling the world that it's just me. So if I'm doing business with just you, if something goes wrong, guess who I'm going to sue? Just you. And that's what a sole proprietorship is setting the stage for. You are telling the world, I am handyman Mario A. Reed doing business as Mario A. Reed fixes stuff. That's not a good insulation because people now can't quite delineate between Mario Reed and Mario A. Reed when he's the handyman. And we don't want that. We want for it to always be clear that you're working with a business. And that's where the LLC comes in. So the limited liability company, which is what the acronym LLC stands for, that entity was created as the most recent inception in the state of Illinois and all throughout the country. So corporations have been around since the 1600s. General partnerships in this country have been around since the 1600s. Sole proprietorship have been around in this country since the 1600s. The LLC, or the limited liability company, is a new phenomenon, which really only came into play in the early 60s and in the state of Illinois wasn't actually ratified and adopted until the early 90s. So this is a brand new phenomenon which was created because those other three options didn't really work for the small business owner or the entrepreneur. And one of the reasons why is because when you look at the checklist that you're seeing here, we have our corporation. So most people are familiar with the corporation, and we see that the business can be perpetual. We see that it can be owned by another business. However, you see this vacancy in this box. A corporation is required to have annual meetings. This is one of the easiest ways to pierce the corporate veil. And this is something that we're going to talk about a lot throughout this workshop. The whole reason why you get a business or a corporation is because you want to protect your personal assets. A corporation is set up to separate the corporation stuff and assets from my stuff and my assets. If you own a home, that's your asset. It's not the corporation's. Now you might work out of your home, and for tax purposes, you may be taking a credit or a write-off as it relates to that home, certain amount of square footage, but the asset doesn't actually belong to the corporation unless, of course, you've titled it that way. So if you have a deed that conveys the property out of your name into the name of the corporation, then it actually does belong to the corporation. But you want to protect your assets from the corporation. Your assets over here, corporation's assets over here. If you're not having regular annual meetings and then maintaining certain records that go along with those annual meetings, as well as making sure that the corporate officers who are a part of your corporation are all joining in on these annual meetings, then you put your assets at risk, because a creditor or a plaintiff can pierce the corporate veil because you haven't been operating like a corporation operates. And this is the #1 reason why our firm, we don't do corporations, because unless you are a major operation, which is already established, and you have been functioning where every year you're getting together with your officers, you're keeping those minutes and you provide us with those records, then you're not really a corporation. You are really operating like a limited liability company. And as a limited liability company, you can have multiple members. So it doesn't just have to be a one-person show. But if you're not functioning as a corporation, we don't recommend that you use a corporation because it's unnecessary. There is an alternative which is better suited. And this is one of the reasons why the LLC came into existence. Before the 90s, small business owners kept getting sued because that's what happened. When you go into business, you put yourself in harm's way for lawsuits. Well, they would think that I'm good because I have a corporation, so my house isn't going to get taken. My cars aren't going to get taken. My bank account isn't going to be touched. My investment accounts, my 401ks. That was the mindset, but they were wrong. And the reason they were wrong is because they weren't functioning as a corporation. It's not enough to register with the Secretary of State and think that you're a corporation. You actually have to function as a corporation. How a corporation is supposed to function is defined in the law. So you can go to the Illinois Corporations Act, which is 805 ILCS. Just type that into Google, type in Illinois Corporations Act, and it will pull up the actual act. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do is allow for individuals to actually see what is meant when I'm talking about piercing the corporate veil. So I'm going to pull up let's see, we're going to pull up an article, which is from the Illinois State Bar Association. So the Illinois State Bar Association, they publish articles, legal articles that help attorneys gain a better understanding about certain areas of the law. This is something which exists, it has existed for a long time. So we have the Illinois State Bar Association, and they have Illinois Veil Piercing Law. It's an actual what's called cottage industry of law. And as a part of this, Illinois courts have settled on the following test for piercing the corporate veil. For a court to pierce the corporate veil, two principal requirements must be met. One, there must be such unity of interest and ownership that the separate personalities of the corporation and the individual no longer exist. And two, circumstances must exist such that adherence to the fiction of a separate corporate existence would sanction a fraud, promote injustice, or promote inequitable consequences. Now, that's a lot of legalese and a lot of legal jargon. So don't get lost in that. But basically what it's saying is that a traditional person, a lay person who's doing business with the corporation can't tell the difference between the person and the corporation. That's what that first part amounts to. And secondly, if the person has been done wrong, having a corporation in effect will do the person who's been done wrong. So what that means is that if you don't have enough money in your corporation, or you try and shut down your corporation when the bad thing happens, that's going to cause injustice on the part of the person who's already been done wrong, your customer or your client. Corporate veils are pierced all the time as a part of breach of contract suits, as a part of tortious actions, as a part of personal injury actions. So that's the reason why, if you're thinking about starting a business, it's wise for you to say, am I really going to be able to have these annual corporate meetings? Am I really going to maintain meticulous corporate records? Am I really going to have all of these officers involved in the facilitation of my company? If the answer is no, then don't risk it. You don't have to, because Illinois has another option, which is far more viable. In returning to, and again, this Illinois State Bar Association article was published back in 2000. So this dates back to July of 2000. And one of the reasons why it's so old is because that's right around the time when the LLCs had came into existence in the state of Illinois. So there was a lot of brand new law that was happening because people were asking, well, how does this pertain to LLCs? What kind of protections am I looking for? My limited liability for the shareholders. One of the other articles that I really, and it's not even an article, it's a blog post, but it is very beneficial because it talks about don't pierce the corporate veil, 11 mistakes to avoid for small business owners. And this is an article that was wrote by Christian Bloom. I don't know this attorney, but the article is well written. The blog post is well written. So I've made certain to want to give all of the accreditation. So one of the top reasons why corporations have their corporate veil pierced is because they have inadequate capitalization. When the corporation's ratio of capital to its obligations in business operations is too low, that's one of the factors that can play in. If you have a business account, but you're only keeping $60 in there, but you have all of these debts that go along with the business, ComEd, NICOR, a Sam's card, business line of credit that you have, that's inadequate capitalization. That's one of the factors or badges of fraud that the Second District Appellate Court has delineated will cause for someone to be able to pierce your corporate veil. Failure to issue stock. Most people create corporations and think, oh, when they ask that question about stock, it's really just fluff. Wrong, it's not fluff. It's actually expected. If you have not issued stock to shareholders or whomever it is that owns that stock, that's something that the court is going to look at. That's a badge of fraud. Failure to observe corporate formalities, not holding regular director and shareholder meetings, keeping minutes of corporate meetings, maintaining corporate records, or updating filings with the Secretary of State. All of those are factors that are going to play into the court saying you've been operating a fraud. Non-payment of dividends, insolvency of the debtor corporation, non-functioning of the other officers or directors. This is one of the biggest areas that's the easiest to quickly find out. If I'm going to sue a small business owner, which has been perpetrating as a corporation, I'm going to first go to the other officers that are listed in the articles of incorporation. And I'm going to ask them point blank and require that they swear to it or perjure themselves. When was the last time that you participated in a corporate meeting? And if they lie, they run the risk of perjury. And when they say, well, I've never done so, that's the first thing I'm going to present to the court. And at which point I'm now going to pierce the corporate veil and I now have access to your personal assets. Absence of corporate records, commingling of funds. When money comes into the business, you deposit it into your personal bank account. This is something that I have been guilty of. For the first 3 years of my law practice, I had a Zelle account. That Zelle account was attached to my personal bank account. Whenever it is that I would get a Zelle, it would go to my personal bank account. In 2022, I made a commitment to create a business Zelle account, which is now tied to my business email address of mario.marti@outlook.com, because I did not want to run that risk. But that's commingling of funds. Money comes into the company, it has to go first to the company. That is important because when McDonald's gets paid, there's no way that money is going to the CEO's bank account because there's no connection whatsoever. That's how you need to approach your business. Diversion of assets from the corporation by or to a stockholder, failure to maintain arm's length relationships among related entities, whether in fact the corporation is a mere facade for the operation of the dominant stockholders. These are the 11 most common mistakes that come up. And I guarantee you, if you are functioning as a small business owner, but you're registered as a corporation, there's a strong likelihood that you are making one of these mistakes. So it's just a ticking time bomb, if you will, between when someone actually goes after your assets. And that's what it is that you want to avoid at all costs. So I'm going to pause here to see, do we have any questions? I've been going for 17 minutes, and per my modus operandi, I always like to see if we have any questions. Anybody has anything that they specifically want to have addressed, because the goal is to make sure that we're addressing it. And greatest of mornings to all who have tuned in. Greatly appreciated. Any questions? Does anybody have any specific questions related to it? I'm going to also go over to Zoom, see if you have anything over there. Nope, as of right now, looks like we're clean. Okay, so we have our corporate veil, and people can pierce that corporate veil. We don't want that to happen. So right now, I want to make sure that I'm sharing the correct screen. So I'm going to come back to our slide. And we are sharing the screen about our workshop slide. So we have the general partnership, like we talked about. We also have the sole proprietorship, and then we have the LLC itself. So most people think, well, I want to have a corporation because I want to be taxed as a corporation. A lot of people have started to hear about the new rave of being taxed as an S corp. Well, one of the things that most people are unaware of is that you can be taxed as an S corp as an LLC. S corp is an elections status. It's a filing status. It's very similar to filing as single or filing as the head of household. As an unmarried man who has a child, I have the option to file my taxes, my personal income taxes, as either single or as head of household. By filing as head of household, that gives me a tremendous amount of additional benefits as opposed to filing single. I can potentially qualify for earned income credits. I can potentially qualify for other child tax credits. That's how it works with your LLC. You can choose to file your LLC as an LLC with the Internal Revenue Service, the limited liability company election status. That's going to include a different filing approach. You can also elect to file as an S corporation. Even though you have an LLC, you can still file with the Internal Revenue Service as an S corporation. There's a lot that's involved with that. I do not recommend you try and do that yourself. Go work with an accountant or a tax preparer, a professional who does this day in and day out, because there's a lot of documentation which has to be provided, and it has to be provided not just at the IRS level, but also at the state level. I learned this the hard way when I was trying to file as an S corp for purposes of payroll benefits. I didn't want to deal with it, so I said, the heck with it, I'm just going to chalk those benefits up. But you have to make that election as early as possible in the process in order to make your life as least miserable as possible. And then the great thing about that LLC is that it can also issue stock. So you'll notice that for all these other categories, none of these first three options check off all of the boxes. In terms of a perpetual business, in terms of being owned by another business, in terms of not having to have annual meetings, in terms of created at that state level, owners can report profits and losses on personal tax returns, owners have limited liability protection, S corp status, as well as issuing stock. The LLC checks off all of the boxes, and that's because it was created most recently for the sole purpose of checking off all the boxes. So that's the great thing about the LLC. Now you got pros and cons of everything. So some of the pros of an LLC is that you most importantly get that personal liability protection. It's easy to set up and maintain. This is really important for small business owners because most of the time we don't have time to be conducting annual meetings. It has a flexible tax structure. The LLC's flexible tax structure has been my saving grace. That was one of the ways that I actually created seed money to start a rehab company, because I was able to take advantage of all of the flexibility of the tax structure, ended up getting back a much larger refund because I was not used to getting back big refunds. I took that refund and I invested in myself, invested in our company, Ardoma, which is what it is that help grow other business. There are no limits on members. So a lot of times people think, well, I have to have a corporation so we can have a president and a CEO and a CFO and a treasurer and a secretary. Not the case. LLCs, that limited liability company, can have unlimited members. Those manager members can be whomever it is that you want. But just remember, you're entering into a business. So if they do something wrong, you now become responsible as well as a managing member of the business. And then there's unrestricted pay. Now in corporations, there's unrestricted pay as well, as we see CEOs now getting $100 million bonuses, but within the LLCs, there's no restriction on pay. Some of the drawbacks, though, is that there are those setup and annual fees. Thankfully, they've been reduced in the state of Illinois. It used to cost $500. Then Governor Rauner came in and said, let's drop that down to $150. So that's one of the great benefits. Every year, that LLC right now costs $75 to renew. You do have to worry about self-employment and excise taxes. That's something that you want to work with your accountant or your tax preparer for, and it's very important that you do so, because the state of Illinois Department of Revenue will come knocking, and then you'll be responsible for addressing that. There are going to be more tax forms. I do my own taxes, and I can tell you from personal experience that those Schedule Cs and the profit and losses, it gets cumbersome. But in my opinion, it's worthwhile because the benefits that I gain in terms of being able to write off those depreciable assets, as well as a lot of other aspects of the tax preparation process, are to your benefit. And then their payouts can misalign on our tax burden. This is one of the #1 things where you need to work with a professional about, because as that business is bringing in revenue, if you aren't offsetting it with the overhead expenses that go along with it, you're going to end up paying a ton of taxes that you should not necessarily have had to done so, but you didn't know that could be offset. And then this last one, it isn't as big of an issue anymore because more companies and lending institutions are accepting the fact that LLCs are here to stay, but it's difficult to raise money. And one of the reasons why it's so difficult to raise money is because you can set up an LLC overnight and you can shut one down overnight. So if I'm a bank, I don't want to run the risk of loaning $10,000 to an organization which can shut down the next day, and then I have no recourse, because once you've dissolved that LLC, nobody can come in and sue it. And even if they do, they're not going to get anything. This is one of the reasons why most companies, lending institutions, early in the process of your LLC, they're going to be asking you to be a personal guarantor. So they're going to ask you to join in on the application and put down your social security number. That's one of the ways that they offset the difficulty to raise money, because they're going to say, we'll go ahead and put this loan in the name of your company, but we also going to have your social security number tied to it. So even if the law offices of Mario A. Reed goes under, we're still going to go after the credit of Mario A. Reed, and then we're going to get a judgment, and then we're going to garnish the wages of Mario A. Reed. That's what that looks like. Now, in continuing, like we talked about, the filing fees. These are the filing fees which thankfully have been reduced in the state of Illinois. It used to be $500 to file, now it's $150. If by chance you had let your LLC lapse, in order to reinstate it, it would cost $500, now it's down to $200. Let's say that you just want to reserve the name because you're not quite sure if you're going to actually start the company, but you don't want somebody else taking that name in the state of Illinois. It used to be $300 to reserve that name. Now it's just $25. And that's basically holding that name for you. It used to cost $250 every year for your annual report. Now it's down to $75. Amendments used to charge $150. People do amendments all the time because they're updating their principal place of business address. They're updating the managing members. They're updating the address of the managing member. They're updating the allocations and the percentages. Used to be $150, now it's down to $50. And then the name transfer used to be $100, now it's down to $25. That's when you're taking one LLC. You want to keep that same business, but you want for it to be under a different name because you want to tweak it a little bit or you want to make a change to it. So the fees have come down drastically, which has allowed for the entrance into the marketplace as an LLC or a business to be far more reasonable. That is a fantastic creation or change, because If you are doing a side hustle, if you're cutting hair, if you're doing hair, if you are selling Mary Kay, if you're selling whatever it is, having that business is going to benefit you from a tax standpoint and from a liability standpoint, but only if you get registered. Formation steps, we're going to pause on that and we're going to switch gears. And we're now going to look at, I shouldn't have done that. So we're now going to look at what it is that everyone needs to have in their repertoire. So when it is that you have a company, an LLC, a lot of people think, well, I've registered with the state. I also have my employer identification number. And because of that, I'm good. Wrong. One of the number one things that every limited liability company or every LLC member manager needs to have is an operating agreement. That operating agreement is the charter document for your organization. You can attempt to do it yourself, or you can hire a firm or a company to do so. That's one of the things that our firm concentrates in. We offer the LLC formation option for small business owners, where we will handle everything. We'll register you with the Illinois Secretary of State. We'll apply for your employer identification number through the Internal Revenue Service, and we will prepare your operating agreement. That operating agreement is the document that you give to the bank, that you give to the lender, that you give to another company that you're planning on entering into a business partnership with. This is the document that says, my business is operated and organized in this manner, and you can rely on the details of this. Our firm actually prepares a bound hard copy in addition to a digital copy. Here's an example of one that we've recently done, and this is for a life coach. It's going to have all of the details of that company. It's going to show who has the 100% interest, if it's 100%. It's going to show who has the responsibility and the capabilities to open up bank accounts. It shows who can dissolve the business. It shows who's indemnified. It shows who has the accounting authorization. All of the details of the actual business are outlined here. And even more importantly, it shows in the event that something happens to that initial business owner, who is it that is going to be the successor? We also include the EIN information. We include the articles of organization. Our firm serves as the registered agent. It shows the certificate of good standing, showing that the company is in good standing, and then all of the receipts to prove that this company was formulated on the date in which it was set. That is what it is that an operating agreement should look like. It should show all of those details to make sure that anyone who's considering doing business, whether it's because they're loaning you money or whether it's because of the fact that they are going to be entering into a partnership with you, they can rest assured that you are completely legitimate with the Secretary of State, with the Internal Revenue Service, and they know who it is that they need to be dealing with. If it's a multi-member manager organization, then that other business or that lender is going to want to talk to the other managing members. That's why it's important that whomever it is that you're going to be listing as a managing member is actually committed and dedicated to working with you in that business operation. So I'm going to pause here again because we went for another 15 minutes, and I'm going to see if we have any question. Oh, I'm sorry about that all this time. I did not know that it was not public. Sorry about that. Thank you for indicating that, Trudy. So I am now making it public. Okay, so greatest of mornings to now the public audience, and I apologize about that. Thanks so much, Trudy, for letting me know that. So we are now public. So for any who haven't caught the first part, and I am very sorry about that, we are covering LLCs, and right now we're on the operating agreement. So we talked about the dangers of having an LLC, or I'm sorry, the dangers of having a corporation, but not functioning as a corporation. We discussed piercing the corporate veil. We talked about how easy it is for someone to pierce the corporate veil if you're not actually having those corporate meetings, if the corporate officers aren't functioning as actual corporate officers. All of that's been covered. If you have questions and you missed it, please feel free to go ahead and post those questions, and I'll make certain that we get to that. And again, I'm very sorry about it not being public. Thanks so much, Trudy, for that. All right, now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and now we're going to talk about growing the business. So one of the things that helps in growing the business is, of course, marketing the business. There are numerous ways to market your small business. Having worked in retail, I would always hear the cliche that word of mouth is the best way to grow your business. As it turns out, it wasn't just cliche, it is accurate. Word of mouth is unequivocally the best way to grow your small business, but there are lots of ways to have word of mouth. And one of the best ways that I've found is to actually have a landing page where the public can see the word of mouth referrals and the word of mouth reviews. So one of the things that I'm going to start sharing now is what it looks like to have a Google page. When I started my company, I knew more than anything that I needed to have a Google page. And that was because Google is where I go for everything. So whenever it is that I'm looking for a business, I go right to Google, and I'm going to go to Google. And typically when I'm looking for something, I just go right and type it in. So in this case, I would go attorney near me. So if in my case of my business, if I'm looking for an attorney near me, I'm just going to type that in. Well, one of the things that you want is you want to show up when somebody's searching for an attorney near you, if that's the business you have. If you cut hair, you want to show up for barbers near me. If you do hair, you want to show up for beauticians near me. If you sell Mary Kay, you want to show up when it says Mary Kay representatives near me. How you achieve that is twofold. So the first way that you achieve it is you just pay for that. You pay an advertising dollar that allows for you to show up. So you'll notice that when I type an attorney near me, there's an ad that comes up at the top, and that ad is for the law offices of Mario A. Reed. That is not by coincidence. Because I'm within a certain radius of the office, I want for anybody who's looking for an attorney near them to show up. And in this case, I've chosen our firm's highest margin product offering as the ad that I want to show up. This is one of the things which, again, if you haven't went to business school or you haven't worked in business, oftentimes you won't know. If you offer a myriad of services, you want to advertise whatever your highest profit margin service is. In our case, expedited probate is the service we make the most money on. And it's very unfortunate because if somebody's died and hasn't gotten their affairs in order, the family often has to go to probate court. It is a very unfortunate set of circumstances that oftentimes leads people to our office, but that's the service that we make the most money on. So on average, our firm is making anywhere between $2,000 to $2,500 on that service. And it's because it is a lengthy process that involves work, but it's labor. So there aren't many materials that go into it in terms of cost. So because of that, our labor, because we're doing it anyhow, is allowing for that to be our highest grossing or our highest margin product. So because of that, that's what I want to advertise. When someone's searching for an attorney near them, I want for them to see not only our firm exists, but we offer this service. So that way we can hopefully get several of those. But what you also want is you want to show up in what's called the organic or the top 3. Because currently I'm here in Lansing, the top 3 are usually going to be attorneys in the local area, here on Torrance, here in Lansing, here on Torrance. However, I'm showing up in still what's called the first page results. So someone only has to scroll 1, 2, 3, 4 down to number 5. And then at which point I'm showing up. That's what it is that I'm going for. However, if you'll notice, there are only a few firms that practice in the same concentration space as our firm. So the CLM Law Group, they're concentrating in bankruptcy. So I'm not actually competing with them. The Dennis G. Giannopoulos Law Office, they do the same law practices. So I'm competing with them. But one of the things that you'll notice is that they only have 8 reviews and it's at a 4.6. Scott R. Wheaton and Associates, they do a similar practice. So I'm competing with them, but they're at a 4.4 on 20 reviews. Not competing with Peter Francis Geraci Law, as a lot of people would say, nobody's competing with Peter Francis Geraci Law, as he has taken out so many television ads that name is a household name if you live here in the Chicagoland area. Then you get to the law offices of Mara A. Reed. We're competing with those other firms, but we have 235 reviews, whereas they have a total of 20 and 8, so 28 collectively between them. Reviews matter. If there's nothing else that you take away from today's workshop about marketing and advertising, it's that reviews matter. You have to get reviews. You have to do whatever it takes to get reviews, ethically and legally, of course. One of the ways that our firm has gotten a lot of reviews is that we've offered free services such as notarization in exchange for a review. So we get a call from a client who says, hey, I need a document notarized, and it's a real estate document. Currency exchanges won't notarize real estate documents because their bond isn't high enough. A lot of banks have gotten out of the business of notarizing real estate documents because they don't understand what they're notarizing and they don't want to try and figure it out or risk it. Because our firm offers real estate services, we not only notarize those docs, but we can help the individual understand what exactly they're signing. We've had individuals who were signing a deed in lieu of foreclosure, didn't understand that they were signing a deed in lieu of foreclosure, who we've explained it, and they say, I don't want to do that. I thought I was doing a modification, or I thought I was doing a refinance. So we offer this service, which normally takes us between 5 and 10 minutes to do. And in exchange, instead of charging them $25 or some nominal fee that's not really going to really impact our bottom line, we ask them to do a review, or we require them to do a review before we actually notarize the doc. This helps us grow our reviews. When somebody calls in and they just take half an hour of our time giving us their story, and we give them insight on where they need to go, which oftentimes isn't our firm, we'll ask that they give us a review in exchange for that free consultation. We give free consultations, and part of what we're asking for is, hey, we've given you our time, now please give us a review. Then, whenever you're doing outreach work, such as workshops or going and helping at schools, ask for the teachers, the parents, whomever's attending the outreach, ask them to do a review. You've given them free information that's helped them. Why can't or why wouldn't they want to then give you something in return as gratitude? The more reviews you have, the more people are going to see your company when they're searching. But more importantly, when they have to decide between whether or not they're going to work with Scott R. Wheaton or whether they're going to work with the law office of Mara A. Reed, they're going to click on those reviews. Reviews matter. So now that they've come here and, oh, okay, I see 235 reviews, they're going to go and click on the reviews. When they go and they click on those reviews, you want for them to have a great set of data to be able to look at. And I'm just going to type in the law office of Mara A. Reed because I want to get right to it. So this is what it looks like when someone goes right to Google and just types in the name. They're going to click on those reviews, and now it's going to bring up all of those reviews. Depending upon how they're sorting, usually most people are going to do the newest because they want to know, hey, has this company been good for a while, or is this kind of a brand new thing where they're just trying to put on a charade, whatever that looks like. They're going to scroll through those reviews, and then they're going to start to make decisions about whether or not they're going to work. The more organic reviews you have, the better. You can actually buy reviews. It's not something that I recommend because most people can tell a paid review versus an organic review. But early on, it might be worth your while to go ahead and pay for that review. You'll see what's listed there, and then you'll be good. Now, in order to create that business page, you're going to have to go to your Google icons, which are right up top, and then you're going to have to go to a business profile, and you have to set up that business profile. Setting up that Google business profile is one of the best things you could do. This is what mine actually looks like. I have two because I messed up on the first one, And instead of trying to figure it out and deal with the verification, I just went and started a new one. So here is my Google Business Profile Manager. This profile manager has all kinds of invaluable information. At the home screen, it's going to show you everything. You can create a post, you can add a photo, you can create an ad. It also tells you if you have messages, so you can reply to them. People can reach out to your business profile page directly. It will also show you your latest post. It'll show you your reviews. It'll let you get more reviews. This is one of the most convenient ways to get reviews. If you have a Google Voice line or a Google Talk line like I do, you can text message right from your computer. That enables you to be able to send links such as to get reviews. I do that frequently, or you can put it in an email, or you can post it on Facebook. But that's one of the benefits. You can also add attributes such as celebrating Black-owned businesses. So here in the month of February, it's Black History Month. Google is kind enough to highlight and showcase Black-owned businesses on Google Maps. In order to do so, you have to add that attribute. You can also accept bookings. Now, one of the things that I want to show are your insights. Over here in this left-hand column, you have the capabilities to track how people are finding you. This is important because the more you can find out how they're finding you, the more you can get to where they're at. Direction request is one of the top things, but also understanding, are people just finding you because they're searching for the law offices of Mario A. Reed, or are they just searching for a category or a product? Real estate attorney or attorney is the #1 way that people are finding me. I know that because my insights tell me. I find out also that they're looking for me either on the map or they're just searching. It then also lets you know what's the breakdown. Are people actually calling you? Are people going to your website? Are people requesting directions? Are people messaging you? And then it also shows you, where are people coming from? Are they coming from certain communities? And in this case, yes, Calumet City and Flossmoor. Those are the two communities where people are searching for me and then searching for directions, which usually means that they're coming to the office. And that's because I've somehow, some way connected with them to say, hey, come on into the office. Now, this can be a little bit misleading because let's say that you have one client and that one client keeps searching for your directions because they're terrible with directions. It's going to kind of skew the results, but it's a starting point. It also allows you to know when you're being called. This is important because from an operational standpoint, you want to make sure your staff is available. In my case, if my staff isn't available on Mondays, it's going to be a terrible Monday for me because that's the day of the week that most people are calling. That's important because now I can schedule my clients accordingly. So again, it's all about having a proficient, effective business. So if I know that 40 people in this month have called me on Mondays, I don't want to schedule my in-office appointments on Mondays. I want to be available to be able to take those clients to hopefully then schedule them on Fridays when not as many people are calling, or Saturdays when not as many people are calling, or even Tuesday. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday, then Friday. This information allows for me to position my business to be most welcoming of when people are calling, trying to become clients, while also respecting the clients who I've already retained. That's a part of having an effective and efficient operation. Photo views are huge because as you add more photos, people then have that show up in their feed, even on Google. And that's one of the ways that people get attracted to your business. Showing what the inside of your business looks like, adding videos. One of the techniques that I've found is using the ad guarantees. So if you have dogs or puppies or what people care about, put that in your photos. A lot of people would say, but that's not professional. It's not about what's professional in terms of attracting. It's about what's professional once you've attracted them. So you'll notice that this lovely young lady is showing up in an ad. Well, that's because people like to see the human side of business owners. So what better way to show that than with family? So all of these photos, you'll notice they've been viewed thousands of times. We have our staff been viewed 3,000 times. We have photos doing the actual work been viewed 4,000 times. The interior of the office. You want for people to feel comfortable that where they're going to show up is something that is a place where they'll be welcome. Showing before and after photos to show, hey, look, this business has grown and this is what it used to look like and this is what we are. And then making sure that you have a photo of your exact location. That's essential. In our case, we are set back really far from the street. So because of that, people drive past us all the time and don't even know that we're here. Our marquee is right on this sign here, but people aren't always paying attention to that. So you want for people to know my business is in this exact location, and then you can even send that to those respective clients. So that's incredibly important. So I'm going to pause here because we went another 15 minutes. I'm going to see, do we have any questions? And yes. So Trudy, that's one of the things that I didn't know either. And again, it's not something we get taught. Typically, we're not going to, Harvard Business School and places like that. We're just figuring this out on our own and understanding that by advertising your highest margin product, that opens up the door for people just asking about it. Now, they might not actually go with that service, but it gets them in the conversation. So I used to think that you should always advertise your lowest product because then people will say, oh, I can afford that, and then come on and find out. But I also got feedback from clients that was kind of the bait and switch. So one of the things that I always recommend if you offer flat fee products is make sure that you spell that out. One of the reviews that I'm most proud of is that a client said the reason why they went with our firm was because no other law firm has their fees laid out so that people know about it right up front. And that's something that I took pride in because I want for us to be transparent in what we're doing. I make no qualms about the fact that our business is in business to make money, but I'm also make no qualms about the fact that there are costs that go along with it. So the reason why we've chosen certain price points is to cover those expenses of the overhead. Clients appreciate the heck out of that. And I'm all about it, and it's worked out very well. So any other questions about anything we've covered? And so that everyone's aware, we're going to go a little bit over. I'm not even going to say a little bit over. We might go between 20 minutes to 30 minutes over. And that's because the goal is to make sure that this is beneficial. So info on how to set up your business properly. Absolutely. So we touched on this briefly at the beginning, but we're going to circle back because much to my neglect, I'm sorry about that. It wasn't public, so it works out well that we'll be able to touch on this again. Setting up your business properly isn't just about the documentation, but it's about the legal ramifications. So if you have a business and that business is interacting with other clients, not all businesses interact with clients or with people, but if your business does, you want to make sure that you are legally protected. And I'm going to open this slide back up that talks about the various options in the state of Illinois. So share screen, LLC workshop. Okay, so we're back at this slide that talks about the different operations. When setting up your business properly, the first thing you have to figure out is who's going to be involved in this business. If you are a one person or a one woman, one man show, then you want to start with the LLC. And the reason why is because the LLC is making the least amount of work for you. Now, let's say that you and 4 of your closest friends who are also interested in the business, they are interested in starting it. That's when you might want to think about moving into the corporation realm. But if you are a one-person show initially, you want to be in limited liability company land. And the reason why is because it's going to be challenging for you to meet the criteria of a corporation if you're only one person. So there's no reason to risk it. Go the route of the limited liability company and do yourself a favor You can always grow your business. You can always convert from an LLC to a corporation and vice versa. You can go from a corporation to an LLC. But in terms of setting up your business properly, you want to make sure that you have separated your business from you, the individual. That's priority number one. There needs to be a clear demarcation between your business and you, the person. And one of the best ways to do this is to have a different name. Now, because it's traditionally known within the legal industry that the law offices, and that's one of the reasons why you'll typically see the law offices come before the name, because I want for every client who walks into our office to know you're not working with Mario Reed, you're working with the law offices of Mario A. Reed. But one of the things that I've also done and learned in 3.5 years of practice is that you need to take it a step further. So that's one of the reasons why we actually have two law firms. We have the Lumarti Law Group, and that's because I don't want anyone having any equivocations or doubts about who they're working with. For our real estate transactions, we use the Lumarti Law Group. And the reason why that is because real estate transactions have way more liability than, for instance, estate planning. So if I do a poor job when representing someone who's buying a $400,000 property and they come back and file a suit against me, even though I pay freaking $250 a month for my malpractice insurance, if the malpractice insurer decides that I'm not going to be covered because what I did was just gross negligence on my part, now I could be liable for that $400,000. Well, I don't want there to be any chance that that client was unaware that they were doing business with a law group. So that's why it is that our transactions for the real estate are handled through the Lumarti Law Group. That's one of the easiest things that a lot of people don't give much thought to. They think, well, you know what, I'm gonna just name it after myself. Sam Walton did it, McDonald's did it, Disney did it, and look at how well it worked out for them. Well, not so fast. Because of the fact that it's easy for someone to pierce the corporate veil, one of the best ways to make sure that people aren't confused about who they're doing business with is name the company something that's not you. So that's one of the first steps and easiest steps to setting up your business properly. The other thing that you need to do is make sure that your business is properly capitalized or funded. We talked about that earlier. We looked at the bar review article, but what that means is that you need to have that business checking account and you need to keep money in that checking account. A lot of times people think, well, I'm starting this business and really it's just a way for me to get tax write-offs or whatever it looks like. No, you need to have an adequate amount of funds in that business checking account, or at least in the name of the business. It doesn't even always have to be in the business checking account. Assets can be you own property in the name of the business. You own vehicles. Technically, you can't own vehicles in the name of the business anymore. The Secretary of State shut that down, but you can have it in the trust that's the managing member of the business. So in terms of how to properly set up your business, you need to register with the state of Illinois. That is priority number one. If you are conducting business in the state of Illinois, you need to be registered with the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois' Attorney General's office goes after non-registered companies every year. I think the list is like over 10,000 bad actors are always targeted per year. How you make sure of that is you register with the state of Illinois. The other thing you have to do is you have to get that employer identification number, and you can obtain that through the Internal Revenue Service. Once you obtain that, it's imperative that you save it, because it's a nightmare trying to get your EIN if you lose it. So save it, download the PDF, print out the document, make sure to email yourself the PDF. One of the things that you want to do with your business's documentation is email everything to yourself. Email your articles of organization, email your certificate of good standing, email your employer identification number, and email your operating agreement, which ideally has all of those documents together. You're going to run into instances where you need that information, and if it's saved on your computer at home, it's going to make things hard. So always make sure your information is in your email. That puts it in the cloud. A lot of people will say, well, now it's vulnerable to hackers. If any hacker wants to get that information, they can get it anyways. So make your life easier and don't worry about the fact that someone's trying to hack your small business in Illinois. It's probably not what they're focusing on. There's a lot of better options to hack than yours. So you're registering with the Secretary of State for your state. You are applying for your employer identification number through the Internal Revenue Service, and then you have to have an operating agreement. If you are a business without an operating agreement, you're not a business. It's as simple as that. Remember, we talked about ways that someone can pierce the corporate veil, and not keeping accurate records was one of those 11 mistakes. If you don't have an operating agreement, you're not a business. I'm going to be just as blunt and as straightforward as possible. And if your operating agreement doesn't actually spell out much of anything, you are not a business. So I used the example of the company that we recently set up. Remember, our operating agreements that we're preparing, they talk about who the managing member is, where the principal place of business is, what state it was formed in. You'll notice the date that it was formed. You'll also notice that we have the legislation, the law itself, 805 ILCS 180. That's the Limited Liability Company Act. We have that information in there. We also have the capitalization, where that's coming from. We have who has the ownership stake. We have what type of business operation is going to be doing. An operating agreement is not the same as a business plan. Those are two totally different documents. The operating agreement talks about the operations. The business plan talks about the strategy, the marketing strategy, the long-term strategies, the business's strategies for making money. You don't always have to have a business plan. I don't have a business plan. The reason why is because it's self-explanatory, in my opinion, what my business is. It's to offer legal services, but I do have an operating agreement, and I have an operating agreement for every single business. Ardoma Housing Solutions has an operating agreement. The Lumarti Law Group has an operating agreement. The Law Offices of Mario A. Reed has an operating agreement. And the South Suburban Rejuvenation Fund has an operating agreement. Every business needs its own operating agreement. Even though I'm the managing member of the last three, they each need their own operating agreement. Who can manage the bank accounts? Who has management of the LLC? What happens in terms of the dissolution and the liquidation? What happens in terms of the indemnification? What happens in terms of miscellaneous aspects? Who is the actual signing member? They need to sign off and execute the operating agreement. I recommend having it notarized. If you have a corporate seal, you should have that corporate seal as well. And then this is one of the key parts that most people simply neglect to do. You need to establish who's your successor. If something happens to you, who takes over the company in your stead? This is to avoid probate. And you'll notice that it's a one-page corporate resolution. And it's as straightforward as can be. If the owner dies, the owner wants this person as their successor. There is no corporate seal in this case because it's an LLC. The owner signs, I as the notary sign, and I notarize it. And now, should this owner pass away, instead of the successor having to go through probate court and establish that they're the heir of the owner and that they're entitled to an interest in their estate, and then going to the Secretary of State and claiming that interest, now they simply take in this one-page document along with the certified copy of the death certificate, switch over the information with the Secretary of State, take the updated articles of organization to the bank, and now they're able to be good. You can't put a beneficiary on a business bank account because the business isn't going to die. That's the reason why you need to have a corporate resolution or a succession plan. Now, depending upon how in-depth you want to get, you might want to specify that the business is to be sold, or that the business is to be liquidated, or that one of the partners is supposed to buy out the other. All of those happen as a part of that succession plan. That's one of the things that our firm does as estate planning. We also deal with the business's succession planning. However, it's not a part of your estate plan. It's a part of the business's succession plan because the business doesn't die. Even if it gets dissolved, it's not dead. It just needs to be reinstated. Inside of our operating agreements, we also include that employer identification number. We include the articles of organization. we include the certificate of good standing. So in order to set up your business properly, you need to have all of those documents. You need to register with the Secretary of State and then obtain the articles of organization, the certificate of good standing, as well as the, those are the two, articles of organization and certificate of good standing. We always include the receipts to make sure that any lending institution knows this was acquired within a certain time period. You also need to register with the Internal Revenue Service for your employer identification number. I recommend save both the confirmation page and the letter because you want to have it in as many forms as possible. You need to have an operating agreement. The operating agreement is the charter document for your company if you're looking to get lending. Every time that I've applied for a hard money loan, whether it was through Lima, whether it was through Bethesda Capital, whether it was through other private entities, they always require my operating agreement. When I've wanted to enter into business partnerships to get money maybe from an individual or to do business with another individual or to get a lease, they've always asked for my operating agreement because that's the primary way that they can ensure that they're dealing with the actual business owner. So that's what you want to focus on when setting up the business. You want to make sure you have all of those different documentations. And yeah, they absolutely might hack that small business for that $50. You got it. And that's one of the reasons why it is that I recommend send it to yourself because they're not really going to be looking to go after you. So one of the other things, and I'm going to kind of shift gears back to the marketing side, because a lot of times people are unaware of this, and I was, and I promised that once I started a business, I was going to make sure to share. So you know how you see it, those people who have those billboards, and I always used to wonder, how much does it cost for a billboard? I had no clue. And if you've never went through that experience before, there's not really a reason why you would. So I wanted to show the rate card. So anybody can request a rate card for your business. So if you're thinking about, hey, I'm interested in getting a billboard because I think it might be a great way to attract business, then you can request a rate card. How you find out who it is that offers that billboard is look at the bottom of the billboard. If you look at the bottom of the billboard, it will say more than likely Lamar, Outfront, or Clear Channel. Those are the three major players in the billboard game here in the Chicagoland area. There are smaller individual ones. Typically, they'll have their information at the bottom as well. But Lamar, Clear Channel, and Outfront, those are the major ones. I've worked with Lamar and I've worked with Outfront. I contacted Clear Channel. Clear Channel is the, what is it, 10,000-pound gorilla. I don't really like them because they don't really care about small businesses, in my opinion. Lamar and Outfront, they work with a lot of small businesses. Lamar, they have a very hands-on approach, but in my opinion, they're not very effective. Outfront has been the most enjoyable experience I've had. I've had 3 billboards. I had one which was digital, and I've had 2 which were print. I do not recommend ever going with the digital billboard, ever. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't even recommend going with billboards, but I wanted to show it because a lot of business owners think maybe this is something to go into. Billboards don't bring you clients. In my experience, and again, I've had 3 of them, billboards don't bring you clients. And the reason why is because unless your product is an impulse product, then the people who are more likely to call billboards are impulse clients. And a lot of people aren't aware of that term, impulse. I'm sure a lot of us have heard it as it relates to the grocery store. Impulse counter. So I worked at Gordon Food Service Marketplace as well as Dollar Tree for several years. So I had to stock the impulse counter constantly. If I was on the register, one of our jobs was to stock the impulse counter. So I got a lot of experience with impulse counters. And impulse counters appeal to impulse clients or buyers. Those are the people where they're standing in line and they grab 3 Snickers bars, or they grab the magazine, or they grab the Carmex or the breath mints that are at the impulse counters. Those are impulse buyers. When you work in a grocery store, that's great. Usually the impulse counter has high margin items, so it's perfect. These people who are impulsive grab it and you make a ton of margin on those items. That's great if you have a grocery store. If you have a law practice, it's probably not as great, because even though people are going to dial you up while they're on the road and they say, I just saw your billboard and I'm interested in coming in. I kid you not. I've probably had 20 people call me from 3 billboards, which isn't really a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. They'll call me and say, I saw your billboard. I want to come in and see you. We'll schedule them for a week out. And of those 22 of them actually showed up. That is a terrible, terrible close rate in terms of the people who showed up. And of those 2, only one of them actually bought any services. People who call billboards are impulsive. They usually aren't very effective on the follow through. Now, a lot of people will say, well, then what's the point of going with the billboard? There is value to going with the billboard because it creates brand recognition. So branding is one of the things that I would constantly hear. When I first started in business, this guy from Comcast used to always call me and say, hey, you need to get a commercial. I've seen your website. Looks like you are a photogenic individual. You need to be on TV. And he said, and it helps with your branding. And I said, what do I care about branding? Like, I'm a law firm. Like, it's not like I'm trying to do product placement in the Super Bowl. But then over time, I learned what that branding was. I got the digital billboard. Then I got the print billboard the first go round. Then when I would see people in the courthouse, Judge McGuire, one of the judges that I would consistently go before in probate court, he would always ask me about my billboard. He's like, didn't I see your billboard on the Bishop Ford? And I'm like, yes, Judge McGuire. And then the next time I see him, he'd ask me the same question. I'm like, what in the world are you doing? But what it did is it created a comfort level for people who were seeing me out and about that I was legitimate. Because now, not only were they seeing me in the courthouse or in City Hall or out at a closing, but they also connected me to the billboard and they connected the firm to the billboard. So in their minds, any firm that could afford a billboard must be legitimate. And because of that, I feel comfortable going with this firm. Now, as you can see, the rates are about $4,000, $3,000 to $4,000. You always want to look for the ones that are the bulletins. I recommend get one near your location, because as that client is driving in on the Bishop Ford, I want for them to see the billboard and say, oh yeah, I'm working with a legitimate company. The question now becomes for you, is it worth $4,000 or really more than that? Because it's $4,600 for the billboard and then $625 for them to actually produce the billboard. It's not all included. The $4,600 is for the renting of the billboard. $625 is what they're going to charge you to actually print out the billboard that gets put up. And then, depending upon if you have a design already, you can save a little bit. If you don't, they might charge more to design your billboard. I recommend let them design it and you give feedback, because that way you know it's going to fit all of the dimensions of their billboard. Now you're going to see over here where it talks about impressions per week. That's nonsense. Impressions aren't really, what they're saying is that 1.4 million people are traveling and seeing that billboard. It's a lot. A lot of people don't even look at billboards. So it's not as if though they're actually getting actual impressions where you know people who are physically looking at it. Billboards are like this. During the pandemic, a lot of people weren't driving, so that drove those impressions down. Furthermore, truckers who are from out of town aren't going to be signing up for your services. People who are visiting from out of town aren't going to be likely signing up for your services. So impressions matter for nothing. You want to know, is it illuminated? That's one of the things. The other thing you want to know is which direction is it in? I want to capture the people who are coming from the city of Chicago, because those are likely going to be my clients, as opposed to the people driving in. They might be coming from Indiana. They might be coming from who knows where. So I'm interested in getting those people who are leaving from Chicago, because typically now they might also be going back to Indiana, but I'm more inclined to have them say they want to work with the firm than the other way around. Now, one of the other things that I learned by going through this process is that even though they say that the rate card is $4,640, when it comes to billboards, it's like the pawn shop. These people are willing to negotiate the price, and they literally say, well, what can you afford? It's like a used car salesman. And then if you say, well, I can afford $2,500 out the door, then they are going to try and find a billboard that works for your budget. That's what I did on my third billboard. Is I went and I said, I got $2,500. I already have the print, so you don't have to worry about doing a new one. And I'm interested in taking that. And they were like, okay, deal. So you can negotiate right now, because we're in a pandemic still, and a lot of businesses aren't investing a lot in marketing. There are a ton of billboards that are available. I'm likely going to take out a new one just for the brand recognition. That's it. I don't expect to get any clients from it. I don't expect for anybody to call me because of it, but I want for the existing clients and future clients who find me on Google or find me in another destination to know they're working with a professional. So that's what those billboards, and yes, branding is absolutely everything. And yes, definitely go ahead and get yourself a billboard, because right now is a great time and it's cost effective. So it's to your benefit to go ahead and get a billboard. Now, in shifting gears back to the other marketing aspect, if you are on Google, you also need to pay for search engine optimization. You need to hire an SEO firm to do your SEO. The search engine optimization is one of the most valuable tools. So I showed you the information on the billboards. I showed you the information on your Google page. Now, next what I'm going to show you is your search engine optimization. So our firm uses a company by the name of Bridge City. So when I first started in practice, I got calls from this company, and it was, the name of it was Bridge City. The guy's name was Jason Sims. He kept calling me. He was persistent, and he said, hey, we can help with your SEO. We can help get you on the first page. And I didn't really know what that meant. So I kept turning them down because I didn't know what it meant, and I wasn't really interested in researching it. I was brand new to the firm. We were growing far faster than I knew, and I was just trying to keep up. So I'm like, I'm good. I'm not interested in kind of growing anymore right now because I can barely keep up. Well, we got things under a handle. We got a rotation. We brought on attorney Brittany Shatani as an associate, and now we started to get into a good groove. And whenever that happens and you're paying payroll, now it's not just how am I going to eat, but it's making sure I can afford to pay our office manager, pay our associate attorney. So I really wanted to have a comfort level that the business was going to be able to withstand payroll, because the last thing I wanted was to have to tell Claudia or Brittany, sorry, but you can't get paid this week because we don't have enough money in the accounts. So my goal was to always keep at least $15,000 in the account, because that way, ideally, we should be able to cover payroll for close to a month. And if that meant that I didn't get paid, so be it. But I had to make sure our office manager and our associate attorney were good. So I needed to now figure out, how can I make sure we have consistent customers? So it was a day that I was stressed out about it. And Jason just so happens to call me, and I'm like, hey, tell me more. So he explains what SEO, search engine optimization, and first page results were. He gave me the information for an attorney. He said, go to Google right now and type in attorneys near me. And I was in South Holland at the time at the office. So attorneys in South Holland. So I typed that in, and then this attorney came up, and I'm going to see if her information comes up. It doesn't anymore. But there was this attorney, and her information isn't coming up, but she was coming up as #1 at the time. And she had 10 reviews, and those reviews were 2.8. And he says, do you know why that is? And I'm trying to figure out, because at the time I had already had like 50 reviews and they were all 5 stars. So in my mind, I should come up above her. But he explained that she's paying to be first on the list. And I said, you have got to be kidding me. I've been doing all this work trying to get all these people to review, and she's just paying a fee so that she shows up as #1. And he says, that's how search engine optimization works. That's how first page results work. And if you want to be there, you got to pay to play. So in that moment, that in and of itself changed my perspective on it. But then he also explained that with that search engine optimization, you can control who's finding you. And this was important because as a law firm, there are numerous practice areas. I don't do personal injury. I don't do family law. I don't do criminal law. So it didn't make any sense for me to show up in those results. So by doing, and I just got to double check, is everyone seeing my email inbox? So let me go over to Facebook Live. Is everyone seeing my email inbox? If someone can just give me a thumbs up. Is everyone seeing the email from Bridge City Firm? Okay, it looks like it is. Perfect. So he explained that I can control who's finding me, and that's through target market keywords, your areas of expertise. So what I wanted to do is the stuff that I actually enjoy most, I wanted to put that at the top. So that's why you'll see estate planning attorney, probate lawyer, wills lawyer, revocable living trust lawyer, power of attorney. And then it gets down to real estate law. I ended up having to tell them, look, I'm not interested in doing foreclosure, so get that out of there. But contract litigation, I've also added expedited probate, and you can play with these different key terms. This is what you need to do because you want the people who you're trying to attack, or I'm sorry, attract, not attack, I'm sorry about that, attract, to contact you. How that works is that when they search certain keywords, you want to show up. So that's one of the things that, again, I had no clue about, that there was a way to optimize it. That's what that search engine optimization is all about. It's saying when someone searches for me, I want for them to find me based on these key terms. I don't want evictions. I don't want landlords. I don't want tenants. So taking that out of the mix helps me to cut down on those calls, which allows me to be more efficient. So now when somebody searches for attorneys in South Holland, and I'm going to go back over to that screen, share screen. When somebody searches for attorneys in South Holland, Illinois, guess who comes up as number 1 in 1A? Because I'm paying for the ad space through Google, I show up there. Because I'm also paying for the ad space or the search engine optimization through Bridge City, I show up 1 there. I'm the number 1 option in South Holland. That's my goal. I want to be the biggest fish in the smallest pond. That's my business's motto. That's my mantra. I've always thought that was the best approach. I don't want to be a Chicagoland known attorney, not at this point, because I can't handle it. But I do want to be the number 1 attorney in South Holland, hopefully the number 1 attorney in Lansing, Calumet City, and the surrounding areas. And how I grow to that point is that when someone searches for an attorney in South Holland or an attorney in Calumet City, I want to show up in the top results. And you have to pay for that. How you pay for that is through a search engine optimization company. I have had a great experience with Bridge City, and it cost me $400 a month. Every month, I paid $399. So I know as a part of my marketing budget, and there's a funny story. I recently got a phone call from the AC Green show. It was AC Green himself. He calls me out of the blue, says that he was looking for Black attorneys in the Chicagoland area. He searched my LinkedIn page and he liked what he saw. And he said, hey, do you want to partner with the radio show? And at the time, again, this was like a month and a half ago. I am drowning in clients. So it's not, I didn't call him, he called me. And then I said, well, I'd be interested in going on and helping people because your radio show does go to lots of people. Now, depending upon where you stand on AC Green, you may be for him or against him. He's very polarizing, but you can't deny the fact that he has a large audience. So I said, I'm more than happy to come on the show and explain things like student loans, repayments, such as estate planning, all these different areas. So then he says to me, well, what can you afford in terms of a marketing budget? Now, whenever someone asks me what I can afford, it's, in my opinion, they're not asking what I can actually afford. They're asking, what do I want to spend? Because I could possibly afford $20,000 a month, but I don't want to spend $20,000 a month because if I'm already happy with what I have, I don't need to. So I equate afford to need. I don't have a need in advertising budget. So I told him $1,000 because that's about what I spend right now between Facebook ads, Google ads, and Bridge City. I spend about $1,000 a month. So my marketing budget, in my opinion, is $1,000 a month. That's what I spend monthly. That's my budget. Pretty simple how that works out in business. Well, he laughed at that. He said, that's nothing. Those were his exact words verbatim. That's nothing. He has attorneys which are spending 10 times that to be on his show. To which I said, I understand. And no disrespect, but you called me, I didn't call you. I'm not interested in spending $10,000 on a marketing budget because I don't need to. I spend $1,000 and I have exactly, or I'll say even more clients than I can handle and I'm comfortable with. And that's a big part of business. Understanding what you want versus what it is that others are telling you is essential. I'm not trying to grow to a $10 million firm. I'm happy at being in that $500,000 to $750,000 range. To me, that's richer than I ever thought I could. I grew up as the middle child of 9 children. I wore hand-me-downs my whole childhood. I got $2 a day for lunch. I would save that money to go and get a haircut at the end of the week, and I would starve myself. So the money that I'm making right now, I'm good. A big part of business is knowing what's your good number. Don't go chasing something that's going to only lead to you having more bills and more stress. What makes you good? I can make payroll every week. I'm able to afford the things that I want. I don't have to worry about my bills not being paid anymore. I'm good. So because of that, you need to set a marketing budget and all of your budget, your overhead, your payroll, all of that needs to be in alignment with what your business's goals are. And that's something that I recommend. If it's not in your operating agreement, consider having it somewhere else, whether it's a document that you keep on the wall of your business, or it's something that you just email to yourself or post on Facebook regularly. What's your good point? Whatever that looks like, put it down because it's easy to get turned around in business. So put that good point. So I'm going to pause here because we are now 23 minutes over where we would normally cut off. But I want to see if anyone has any questions because I'm going to start wrapping it up. And I want to talk about a few remaining things. But I want to see, are there any questions? Does anyone have any specific questions about anything that we've covered or haven't covered? But yes, I agree that figure out your good point is essential, because if you haven't, then it's going to get very risque, to say the least. All right, so we talked about the operating agreement, we talked about the marketing, we talked about the search engine optimization, we talked about billboards and what it is that they will cost. Now, one of the last things that I want to discuss is making sure that you're not commingling those funds. So we talked about it earlier. Not everybody had availability to it, so I'm going to discuss it again. The money that comes into your company needs to go to your company first and foremost. If you want to have it hit the company's bank account and then go straight to yours, so be it. I recommend, and it was only because of our office manager pushing for this, set up your payroll formally. There are numerous companies out there. A lot of times the banks that you have your business checking account, they offer a service, but set up your formal payroll. Our firm, we use Paycor. And one of the reasons we use Paycor is because they have made life as easy as possible for the payroll. So a lot of times people say, well, I'm the only one on payroll. Doesn't matter. It works out to your benefit to actually get a paycheck. And one of the reasons why is because when it comes time for you to apply for a mortgage, or it comes time for you to apply for a personal loan or any type of financing, being able to produce a W-2 as well as a pay stub gives those lenders comfort. And I know it sucks because a lot of times people say, well, this is 2022 and everybody runs their own business these days. And you're right, a lot of people do. But still being able to give a lender a W-2 makes the world of difference. So I rehab properties. And one of the ways that I wanted to rehab properties was with other people's money. I've worked with Wintrust in the past, and they've been a great experience. In the past, when I was working for the county, I was able to give Matt Chin, who's my mortgage broker, I was able to give him the W-2s and he could get me approved right away. It would be for a conventional loan. I'd have to put 20% down, but I was able to buy that property, put the 20% down, get the work done, pay a mortgage for a few months, and then invest maybe $40,000 to $50,000 of my own money, and then make another $40,000 to $50,000. That was a great, in my opinion, gig. It was a great hustle. When I went into private practice, because my books were terrible, I wasn't handling the accounting, I was just trying to make it. And so my tax return, it was terrible. I was writing everything off. So on paper, I wasn't making anything. So then I didn't have a W-2, I didn't have a paycheck stub. And I was telling Matt, look, man, I'm making money, but my overhead's high. He was like, I get it. I know we deal with small business owners all the time. I didn't have my affairs in order in terms of the company's operation. I was commingling funds. Money was coming in through Zelle, going to my personal bank account versus where the business account. So then Matt said, look, man, you got to make money. And on paper, you got to make money. So whether that's because you're paying taxes every year or what, that's up to you and your accountant, but you got to make money. So for 2020, I paid taxes. Ended up paying the government like $20,000 in taxes. And then in 2021, I said, Matt, I'm good because now I actually have a W-2 because we created the payroll system with Paycor. We didn't do the first quarter, so I had to do a 1099 for that. And I know I'm going fast, but again, I'm not trying to take your whole morning, just trying to tell you a good story about why it's so important to have your affairs in order and not commingle funds. So then in September of 2021, I called Matt and say, Matt, I've been paying taxes to the IRS and I'm good. And I send Matt the paycheck stubs that I'm getting, tell him I'm going to get a W-2 at the end of the year for the first time as a business owner, which was to me a big deal. And he says, okay, you look good, but you got to pay another year's worth of taxes. So either you can go back to 2019 and amend it and pay those taxes, or you can just wait until the upcoming year. And if anybody knows me, I'm not trying to pay the government anything extra. So I said, Matt, we're going to wait till 2022 because I'm not going back to 2019 to give them more money. So I do that, give Matt the tax returns, file my tax return for this year. And now, because of the fact that my affairs have been in order in terms of the business's documents, money's not being commingled anymore. It's all going to the business account. I have a W-2 in place that shows what it is that's being brought in. I went from not being able to qualify for a mortgage as an entrepreneur because my stuff wasn't right to now I recently got pre-approved for a $400,000 mortgage. That's going to enable me to go into Orland Park, go to Mokina, go to Crete, and be able to buy a property. I'm gonna have to put down $46,000. That's the numbers that he's giving me. And then I'm gonna have to come up with the cost to actually handle the rehab, but potentially you're gonna be able to turn $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 into $150,000 to $200,000. And that's in large part because now my documentation associated with the business is in order. And I was able to give Matt a W-2 and paycheck stubs that say, this is coming in consistently. And now Wintrust has no issues, questions, comments, or concerns about loaning me this money because everything is transparent. I'm doing the same thing. I've been an attorney a private attorney since 2019 up till now. The difference is that I changed my operations, and in changing my operations, it put me in a position where now I can grow other businesses based on the leverage of the successful and effective business. And that's why it's so important you have your business affairs in order. So that's the personal story that I have. I'm sure we could talk about a heck of a whole lot more, but at this point, we've went a good hour and a half. So I'm now going to see, does anyone have any? Please let them know that the only reason you can get a paycheck stub is because your LLC is taxed as S Corp. Just having an LLC doesn't allow you to be on payroll because it's future. So there you go. So that's one of the reasons why, Trudy, I'm not even going to get into any of that because I recommend go talk to your professional, talk to your accountant, talk to your tax preparer. One of the things that I've also learned in the midst of all of this is that it's important Let the professionals do what the professionals do. I don't even want to change the power steering fluid or windshield wiping fluid of our company car. So we pay Grease Monkey to go and do that. That's because I want to be an attorney. So I let the professionals who work on cars work on cars. Do not try and do your own taxes yourself when it comes to your business. It's too hard. It is too hard, and it's not something you have the time and usually the efficiency to do. So let the professionals do that. If you're in need of one, right now, Trudy Howard is on this call, so you can see her information. Whomever it is that you're working with, make sure you have a good chemistry and a good relationship with, because just like your attorney, as I tell people all the time, I'm not an attorney for everyone. I operate in large part via email as well as text message because I need to be as efficient as possible. If you need an attorney who you can call on the phone and talk for an hour and a half for, I'm not that attorney. So finding an attorney who works for your approach is important. The same for your tax professional, the same for whomever it is that's going to be your IT professional, the same for whomever is going to be your, even for our vehicles. We like to go to a company that's going to be quick and get them in and out. Let the professionals do what the professionals do and focus on doing what you do as a professional. So when it comes to that preparation, make sure that you're working with a company, a tax preparer, or an accountant that gets you and understands you and what your goals are. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and leave it open. We'll stick around for 3 more minutes. If there are any questions that anyone has, go ahead and post them. I'll get them answered. Thank you, Ms. Shatani, for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. Hopefully this has been beneficial. Hopefully individuals are learning how to grow their business. In 2022, there's nothing that should be getting in the way of you growing your business to what you want. Technology has made it so convenient and so easy, so you have the access and the option to be able to do so. It's just up to you to do so. Any other questions? If you have any questions, please feel free to post them. I'm going to get them answered. It looks like everyone is over on the Facebook side this go around as opposed to Zoom, which is okay. That's why we hosted on both of them. Feel free to post any questions you may have. I'm going to stick around. So thanks so much, Kim Jones. Greatly appreciate it. And thanks everyone who's tuned in, as these are for everyone. So the goal is to make sure that you have access to always. If your credit is not the best, is it okay to use your own money to start? Yes, that is a great question and greatly appreciated, and greatest of mornings to you, sir. So one of the things that a lot of people aren't aware of, because again, it's not taught, is that if you have your own money, you have your own credit. So what you need to do is take that money, and instead of just paying cash for everything, go to a bank like Fifth Third Bank. I use One United, which is out on the West Coast. They're actually in Compton. It's a Black-owned bank. Unity Visa is where I started. So I took $5,000 of my own money when I got my tax return, and then I deposited with One United, and that enabled me to have a Visa credit card. That's a secured credit card. By having that secured credit card, and this was right after I filed bankruptcy. So I filed bankruptcy in 2011 when I had just graduated from law school because I had too many bills. The discharge happened in 2012. No, I'm sorry. So I filed in 2012 and the discharge happened in 2013. Well, 2 years later, I was able to qualify for a mortgage for my home in South Holland all by myself while only making $55,000 a year. And that was because as soon as I filed the bankruptcy and the discharge was completed, I took $5,000 from my tax return and used it to open up a secured credit card. You can do the same for your business. You can open up a secured credit card for your business. So take that money that you would normally pay cash for whatever your business's operational expenses are, use it to open up a secured credit card in the name of your business, and then use the credit card. And that's going to build your business's credit card. And in many ways, it might also build your personal credit card, depending upon how that lending institution sets up that card. So if your credit is not the best, it is definitely okay to use your own money to start, but use it to start your own credit, as opposed to just paying cash and not getting any benefits from it. So when we started our DOMA, creating a credit account was important, because instead of us then having to pay for all those materials, we can now go to Floor and Decor and we can use our company credit card to finance it, which we might have no interest for 3 months. Well, hopefully we'll sell the property and then it'll pay it off. So we didn't have to use our own money. So if your credit is not the best, use the cash, but use the cash to start credit for your company or for your, even for yourself. So that's a great question. Any other questions? And thanks to all who did make it on. Thanks for all who attended. I greatly appreciate it. Any other questions? Stick around here. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. Let me just refresh my screen because I know sometimes it's delayed. So I'm going, that's not the video that we're focusing on. So give me 1 second. I'm going to refresh to see if we have any other questions. What company do I suggest for secured business cards? So my recommendation is start with whatever company you have your business checking account. So yes, in credit cards. So Fifth Third, as an example, they offer a secured credit card option. Usually you have to go in and ask somebody because they're not advertising it, because a lot of companies don't like doing secure credit cards because they're not really making all that much money off of them. So a lot of banks, Bank of America offers a secure credit card, which I never knew up until I dug for it. So my recommendation is whatever bank you use for your business checking account, get the secure credit card through there, because then it makes it easy to make those payments right from the business checking account to the credit card. I have a business credit card. I have 2 business credit cards with Bank of America. And thank you. And that's in large part because of the fact that I have Bank of America for my personal account, so it makes everything easy. And one of the lessons that you'll learn in business is make it as easy as possible for yourself, because it's hard. Business is hard, so make every other aspect as easy. I also have a secured credit card through One United, which is the Black-owned bank out on the West Coast in California, Compton. I'm going to be honest, the experience hasn't been the best because it's tough to access information. They're a smaller company, and as a result, you're dealing with a lot of those things. But I appreciate the fact that I'm investing in a Black-owned bank because there aren't very many of them. So that's why I've kind of overlooked the fact that it's not the best experience, because I'm trying to help them grow just like I hope people work with our firm. Sometimes we get behind on processing documents and reaching out, and I'm hopeful that people will be willing to work with us. So it goes both ways. You got to be willing to look past some of the warts and shortcomings of small businesses, in my opinion. So that's that. Any other questions? Any other questions? If so, post them. If not, at 10:40, we're going to be signing off. Thank you to everyone who has attended. Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. All the compliments and all the acknowledgments. My hope is that we're continuing to educate, to elevate. It's Black History Month. William Edward Barghart Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, once said, educate to elevate, and that is my commitment. The only way we elevate our community is we have to be educated, and that happens not because of the fact that we're going to schoolhouses, not because we're paying for degrees, but because those of us who are doing it are sharing the information with the rest of us. We all have an obligation to move our community forward. We are our brothers and sisters keepers, and it's important that we do that within business as well, and just in general. So have a great one all. Happiest of Black History Month. Everyone take care. I'll see you next Sunday. Next Sunday, we are going to transition to estate planning. We're finally going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the trust and the importance of it. So if there's a session you don't want to miss, it is next Sunday, 9 a.m. That one's going to go 2 hours. So just block it out. Be ready. Next Sunday, we are talking about trust and how you can use a trust as your managing member for your LLC. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Go Rams. OBJ. Hope you all win it. Take care, all.